Hello, and welcome to Intentional Community Conversations with Intend Indiana. In this series, we spent time exploring topics designed to share community development resources available through Intend Indiana. My name is Stephen Meyer, Chief Executive Officer for Intend Indiana, and today I'm speaking with Lou Tisler, Executive Director of National NeighborWorks Association, an organization that has been an advocate for better neighborhoods and housing for low to moderate income American families since 1996. Welcome, Lou.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about NeighborWorks America and the National NeighborWorks Association?
Sure, they are two distinct different organizations. National NeighborWorks America is a congressionally chartered nonprofit. It is also nonpartisan, and they have almost 250 affiliates across the country, working in 4,400 urban, suburban, and rural communities, doing affordable housing, community development, community organizing, lending, and a host of other programming that is specific to the areas that the NeighborWorks organization, like Intend Indiana, want to address.
So then your day-to-day job is essentially doing advocacy work on behalf of all of the NeighborWorks America affiliates, correct?
That is correct. We have approximately 240 organizations across the country, in every state, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. And these members are truly doing a network of excellence job across the country, doing about $10 billion of affordable housing, community and economic development year over year. So National NeighborWorks Association goes to the Hill and advocates on our members' behalf, but we're also the voice of the network to NeighborWorks America, who receives the grant funding that we go to the Hill for.
So I'd like to talk about that advocacy work at the federal level a little bit. Can you describe what that it is like and how your day-to-day work involves interacting with both congressional leaders, but also regulatory organizations and other organizations that are working in this field?
Sure. A lot of times people will say that there's magic behind the advocacy, and that way they can charge you a lot of money to be able to do that. But it's really basic in terms of building relationships. And what we do almost every day is to build relationships with those on the Hill, with the staff, with the elected officials, with the administration, with agencies that are doing regulatory and policy type things. And so we spend time on the Hill, which is definitely very effective in terms of talking to staff and others, but also in terms of the now virtual ability to reach out. It makes it easier to be able to have Hill visits with staff almost person to person because you're on video. But it's really creating those relationships and not always asking for something, but also giving something. And that means giving the staff help, being able to have access to our network, and those like Intend Indiana in terms of helping constituents access affordable housing. And so it's definitely a day by day, but something different every day because different staff and different elected members respond to different ways of outreach.
I think that's a really good point. Something that I have experienced in my advocacy work is that the staff, especially, are incredibly curious about what is working, what isn't working, some areas where they can focus their attention. It is astounding to me, like how much they are responsible for, and so they are very curious about how this affects the practitioners on the ground to make sure that the programs that they're involved in are effective.
Yeah, the staff are truly key. So there's 100 senators and 435 House of Representatives, but an incredible staff behind them. Those 535 people cannot be experts in everything that they're coming through. And their goal is to represent the constituency and make sure that they're in office going forward, where the staff become the subject matter experts. And so a lot of times our NNA members may feel like they've not been able to see elected officials, but only staff. But it's never just only staff. It is those who will take your cause up the chain. And that's the win that you want to be able to have, because the staff are not just the gatekeepers, but again, subject matter experts.
Yeah, and those building those relationships is key to making sure that they're informed as to what issues affect us, but also making sure that those messages do make it to the decision makers. So, can you talk a little bit about why Indiana, which may be surprising to a lot of people, is important on the federal level?
Well, I think that the the federally elected officials that Indiana has positions itself well. And I'd like to focus on Senator Todd Young, who's a senior senator from Indiana. He has been incredibly focused on rural issues that affect the state of Indiana. But then also, there was a realization that housing that is affordable is also an issue to those in Indiana, not just in the urban areas of Indiana, but across the rural communities. And so he has been able to introduce legislation, which is called the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, and we call it Neighborhood Homes. That is a bipartisan piece of legislation that would do incredible things. It would incentivize private investments. It would create a tax credit to be able to spur private developers to engage. It also covers excess costs, building costs, and renovation. It also caps the price of homes. And this is not just good for Indiana, but across the country. But specifically for Indiana, this would address some of the supply side issues of homeownership in terms of approximately 9,600 new homes coming online and just about $2.5 billion of development revenue over 10 years. And so Senator Young has been a champion. He's been a very good steward of taxpayer funds, but also looking at those across the state of Indiana and across the country to be able to address those things. We've had him speak to our organization. I know that you and I have met with his staff on the Hill, which has been incredible. And so there's a lot of stuff out there about Senator Young and the good stuff that he's done, as well as the congressional members. And so you have 9 congressional members in Indiana that are also the voice of the people of the state. But in terms of a little bit of trivia about Senator Young, is that he's positioned on the Senate floor to hold the candy desk, in the candy desk, which sounds odd, but that desk is positioned near the door, and he has Hoosier confectionaries supply candy that he then passes out to members of Senate as they come through the door, or they can just go in his desk and grab what they want. And one of the oddest things that I saw that was in there was the toxic waste sour gummy worms fresh from Indiana. So a lot of stuff in there. So not only is it legislative leadership, but it's also some sugar leadership.
And is that an elected position then within the Senate?
It is not. I know that there's a lot of leadership positions in the Senate, but it is due to location and assignment of desk. And so the previous holder of the candy desk was Senator Toomey from Pennsylvania.
I see. Well, it sounds like a very important role, and we should, as Hoosiers, should be proud of the role we play in keeping the Senate moving forward. Because there are lots of late nights, and
Yes, indeed.
sugar is important for sure. So, kind of at a high level, then neighborhood homes is for folks who are watching this that are familiar with the low-income housing tax credit. That's on the multifamily rental side. Neighborhood homes is roughly equivalent, but on the single-family home ownership side, correct?
Yes. So the low-income housing tax credit has been incredibly successful across the country and in many communities in terms of supporting affordable housing. But when we look at home ownership and having someone uh, be invested in their community right off the bat, this will spur against supply side, but will also spur prideful home ownership in various communities across the country.
Yeah, it's a very exciting program. So we certainly appreciate Senator Young's leadership in the Senate on this issue. So we talked a lot about how important it is to have relationships with elected officials. Um, we focus primarily on affordable housing and community development priorities, but there are certainly other issues that we're engaged in. Can you talk a little bit about how people should go about developing those relationships and what it's like when you're developing those relationships with staff, especially?
Sure, great question. And a lot of times people get intimidated because it's a federal relationship, right? But building that relationship is no different than building your relationship with your state representatives, is no different than building your relationship with your local officials. It's really finding common ground. I think that as a constituent, they're very much more welcoming to be able to sit down and talk. And so it's easier to be able to get that sit down. But you want to start out, and almost every meeting, your introductory meeting starts out the same. They want to know why you are there. And so it's important to get your ask or your reason for being there out as soon as possible, and then back that up with a story. And so getting your foot in the door really will leverage your relationship going forward. But again, being able to make the ask, tell your story, and then offer that assistance. How can I help you do your staffing job? How can I be a subject matter expert, or how can I give you what's happening on the ground? And then, of course, the most important thing is to say thank you and to be appreciative, because once you get in the door, the staff could see many people, and a lot of times they have to say no to many people. So once you're in, you're starting that relationship, and so it's important to follow up. It's important to give them wins that you're having, to give them challenges that you're having. You've asked in the initial meeting, but that doesn't mean that every time you speak to them there should be an ask. But when you're going there with a specific, whether it's legislation, whether it's funding, whether it's policy, is that they're expecting there to be an ask. And then, going back to that intimidation, we hear a lot from our members, I don't want to mess this up. And there really isn't a way to mess that up. I mean, you have to really try, because they want to hear, and you have said, in terms of the staff wanting to know, they want to know. Um, the thing that is surprising a lot of times is that these meetings could be 15 minutes, 30 minutes. A lot of times people think it's going to be an hour or, longer than that. There's times that it's 15 minutes, they have what they need, and they're moving on. You can meet inside the elected official's office. It's very nice. There's leather chairs, there's a nice wood table, everything else. You can meet in the office lobby, which you've got tons of people coming in and out, or you can meet in the halls. And it should never be judged where you're meeting in terms of how effective your meeting is going to be.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've had meetings in all of those places, and it is not indicative at all as to how productive that meeting is going to be as to where it took place. So, and I was intimidated the first time I did Hill visits, and I did them with you, and I was very grateful for your guidance, because until you've done one or two of them and you understand how quickly these meetings go and how they expect you to get to the point as quickly as possible, and be respectful of their time. You don't really have a feel for what it's like. It's not, they are very curious, and they will be generous with their time to the extent that they can, but it is a little bit different. There's not a lot of small talk.
Right.
Uh, they kind of get to the point. So, I certainly appreciate you going along with me on my first hill visits. And I've taken other people now because there is that intimidation factor to get over. But um, I would say for folks who are interested, if you're in DC, um, I don't know that I've ever had an elected official that I reached out to. I mean, with a week's notice that didn't have somebody that could meet with me while I was in town. So I would strongly encourage reaching out to them in advance if you're going to be in DC anyway, and also find somebody who's done these and ask them to go with you. They're never going to ask like, "Why did you bring this person with you?" So. So yeah, it's been a very fruitful activity for me personally. I think for Intend Indiana to develop those relationships. I think it helps inform the staff, especially. A lot of times we're asking for things. But the other thing they like to hear about is, going back, what did you do with ARPA funds? They often don't hear the success stories. So I think it's always really important to highlight how that work that they did sometimes years ago affected their constituents in a positive way.
Definitely. So the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, we've been working on this for almost over 8 years. So a lot of things don't move very quickly, but when the funding does come out, they do want to know how it's being implemented, who it's being affected, and if you can put somebody's name, a resident's name, and perhaps just the first name, uh, with that story, and to really tell them how that affected them. Um, it cuts across the bureaucracy that people see and believe that, oh, well, somebody's paying $5,000 for a hammer. That's not the case. It is really, you are helping somebody become a homeowner. You're helping somebody be, become a renter because, home is really the bedrock for success in terms of uh, education, in terms of health, in terms of personal economic uh, feasibility. And so being able to do that and show staff the effectiveness of what their boss has done, because then they can go and tell the boss, "Hey, I've got a success story. We did good," and I think that's really important.
Yeah, those success stories are just incredibly powerful when you're having these conversations that are sometimes esoteric. So,
Yeah. I mean,
so
you also do want to do some research, right? And so, Senator Young attended Indiana University, Indiana University, right?
mhm.
IU. You don't want to go in there with your Purdue sweatshirt on, right? Probably not. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't respect Purdue, but you want to be able to do some research to see what committees your elected officials are serving on, what they find important. And again, you can find some of those, facts out there that create a relationship that people will know that you actually spent some time, i.e., the candy desk.
And to come full circle with the candy, almost every office I've ever been to has candy or treats that are from the elected officials district, and you can uh, learn more about a district that maybe you weren't all that aware of.
Right. You know, they'll offer you a bottle of water, but then they'll offer you something that comes from that state. And, if you do 6 hill visits in a row and you're being polite and taking those, you can also build up um, that sweet body.
These are all important tips to keep in mind.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Lou, so much for joining us today and for sharing your perspective and experience around, especially around federal advocacy. It's so important, especially at this time, to be advocating for NeighborWorks America, for all of the affiliates around the country, and for communities that are affected by actions at the federal level. And thank you, everybody, for watching Intentional Community Conversations with Intent Indiana. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and learn more about community development work. Please make sure you are following us on social media and visit our website at intentindiana.org. Thank you.